there's whistleblower protection for state employees, and legislation would expand that. I'm Jill Horner. This is Comcast Newsmakers. With me is Pennsylvania State Representative Brian Ellis. Thanks for being with us.
Oh, no problem. Glad to be here.
We're talking about a variety of pieces of legislation, but one of the pieces of legislation is related to whistleblower protection. There's protection in place for a variety of individuals in the Commonwealth, but your legislation would actually expand it.
Absolutely. One of the things, and we've been working on this, will be our third try. We saw a need a few years back when the federal government did a stimulus program to implement some safeguards for the taxpayers to make sure that those dollars that were coming into Pennsylvania were being spent well. And one of the things that they included in that legislation was to make sure that anybody that was receiving federal dollars had whistleblower protection if they saw the private sector committing fraud or abuse. We thought it was a great idea because there are so many dollars that come into Pennsylvania, from state revenues, and then we send those out to different companies to do work for, whether it be a road project or a hospital project. And we just want to say, if you work for one of them and you see them wasting or stealing taxpayer dollars, you can turn them in without losing your job, just like a state employee can do if they see somebody wasting money.
And what kind of protection, what kind of support are you getting for this whistleblower protection?
Well, the great thing about this is because it is such a simple concept that if you see somebody stealing, you're allowed to turn them in, that across the board, we've had support. We've worked, when we created the language, I worked with a colleague of mine on the Democratic side, Mark Gergley, and we had the AFL-CIO, the Chamber, the small businesses, the unions, everybody in one room, and we said, yeah, this is the right thing to do. And we passed it unanimously through the House 2 years ago. It was the very first piece of legislation the House did, and this year we did it in the first week. So this is obviously something the governor has indicated he's for. And why wouldn't he be? You're going to save taxpayer dollars.
In addition to that piece of legislation, you have a piece of legislation related to the cost of care at animal shelters. How does it currently work when an animal is removed from abusive or neglective situation?
And the sad part about it is it's so happening so often. I mean, you almost can't pick up a newspaper 7 days in a row without seeing at least one story of an animal that was seized. Animal cruelty exists. I'm a dog lover myself, and the way it would work right now is if someone's abusing their animal and they get turned in for animal cruelty penalties, those animals will go to the local shelter. Whatever, every county does it a little differently. But then they have to host that animal and keep it alive and take care of it until the trial happens. And so what we said we should do is speed up the process, and for both sides, because sometimes people are falsely accused. And so what we put into place in my legislation is a system where the shelter can appeal to a judge and say, hey, we need the person to give us payment for the cost of care. Right now, you don't get payment until after they're found guilty. After a long trial, they're guilty, they don't have the money, then they give up ownership of the pets. Now we allow them, under this legislation, they can give up, if they know they were guilty and they feel, and the judge says, yeah, there's a good chance this person's guilty, you can either continue to pay for it or you can give up ownership, and then the shelters can do what they do best, which is adopt those animals out into the community. And the unique thing about this legislation too is we actually shortened down the time span. We've all seen the stories about trials that go on for months and months and appeals and everything like that. This brings a due process to it for both sides. We're going to get things resolved within 2 weeks. There has to be a hearing, and we can move forward, saving these shelters a lot of money, and hopefully they can continue to do what they do so well.
Thanks so much for being with us. These are just some of the issues that you're working on during this session. Of course, the budget and the potential privatization of the liquor store system here in the Commonwealth as well.
Yeah.
Thanks for being with us.
You're welcome.
We've been talking with Pennsylvania State Representative Brian Ellis. I'm Jill Horner.